Hello and welcome. My name is Angelique Porter. I'll be your host for this evening. And today I'm just setting the tone of getting into what I hope will be a long running look at the mysteries and gossip of historical royalty. It's something I'm super interested in. I've always been fascinated by this. And I just want to invite you in because I love a good gossip, but really, this is going to be a more investigation into the gossip, the things that we know about, but there might not be actual proof, or if there is some proof written down somewhere, I'm gonna try to investigate and like why this maybe came, the psychology of the weirdness of life, or these stars that for one reason or another fall from grace because they are propped up and known throughout hundreds of years of history. So grab a blankie. Imagine that we're cuddling up near a campfire. We got some sodas. We got some snacks, some popcorn, marshmallows, what have you. It's a nice autumn night. Just imagine we're just outside, just chilling, and we're just gonna gossip. So I am by no means a licensed teacher or professor or historian or anything. So just making that clear. This is purely for fun, and this is something that I have always enjoyed. And I just want to catalog it and give me a reason to do some deep dives and some research. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so Marie Antoinette's going to be the first one. I think this is the perfect one. And there's so much you could say about her as a figurehead, as a woman, as just a person. But today I want to focus on the phrase, let them eat cake, which has always been attributed to Marie Antoinette. But over the years, especially the past 20 so years, that has really become more debunked with actual historians, and I'll have some sources. I'll have some cited works to give you if you are interested in going further. But this is an interesting topic to me because historians have kind of debunked it, because it's like, where did this come from? We don't have anything of during her time period of anybody saying that about her. So, just going to briefly go over her life a little bit and then get into it and see if we can kind of just figure it out. We're going to investigate a little bit. So pull up a glass of wine or your favorite non-alcoholic beverage, and we're just going to gab here. We're just going to talk about it. So Marie Antoinette is not her exact birth name. She was not French by birth. She was born in Vienna, Austria, November 2nd, 1755. So a Scorpio, sun in Scorpio. So if you know anything about astrology, a lot of Scorpios have some darkness that unfolds in their life, some tragedies, can get the shorter end of the stick sometimes, which does happen to her. Spoiler alert if you've never heard of Marie Antoinette. So at this point, I'm trying to do math. What is that? Almost 300 years? It's like 250 years ago she was born. So not that long ago in the history of history. But her birth name was Maria Antonia Josepha Joanna. I'm probably going to butcher some of these Austrian and or French names, so let's just get that out of the way. In This is an interesting fact that I found out, and I didn't know this, the day she was born was after a great earthquake killed 30,000 people in Lisbon, Spain. So it was already from the jump just uh, ominous, her life. Um, so her parents essentially were like, you need to go to France to help the relations between Austria and France because they're not good. They're not good. I know you thought you were going to marry an Austrian man, blonde and stuff, but we need you to become the Queen of France, make our relationships tight. And she was like, okay. Um, she became queen at the age of 18, so very young to us. Not that young back then. That's a whole nother thing. But when she got here, she found it was a little difficult to assimilate to the court of Paris, France. And a lot of what I am getting information wise comes from a lot of different sources. But there is a biography by Andre Castellot. I hope I'm saying that right. I will make a link of that about Marie Antoinette's life if you are curious. There's also Encyclopedia Britannica. There's also a movie Marie Antoinette that was made by Sofia Coppola, but I digress. So, with all these sources, we know that she did not have an easy time. It's a very different culture shock, very proper. There was a lot of things she needed to do, and they were all about her needing to have kids like immediately. And there's hierarchies. There's, people need to watch you eat. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm very fascinated with royal rules and such. But so she did end up kind of getting into good graces with some of the people in the court. So you have archdukes and duchesses and so on and so forth. So she starts to like become more social with the people in the court, the duchesses and the dukes and so on and so forth. And it definitely helped that after a long amount of time, like long in those days, like usually got pregnant pretty quick. And that's a whole nother separate story going on with him and how that possibly could have contributed to their delayed conception. Anyway, she finally got pregnant and gave birth to a child, and so that eased tensions, and she was partying and doing all these things. And what I think probably contributed somewhat to her downfall is that they were still essentially kids when they came into power, didn't have a lot of time to really figure out politics and how to run a country. And there was war happening because the Revolutionary War was happening in the US. So spending was a big issue. And you have these younger people who, even though that wasn't thought of as too young back then, they were still very, very inexperienced, even though you could get married at 16 and 18 and have a family. Running a whole country, even if you were in power, like say you were a very young king or queen, there was usually some advisors, and you might not even, depending on how young you were, you're not even really historically allowed to make a lot of decisions until you come to a certain age. So, with those factors in mind, I do believe that there was some erroneous spending helping out a lot of other countries on top of just how much the royal court was spending, having these lavish parties and all these buildings and everything lavish. I think it was just a disaster. And it was a final nail in the coffin for the people of France, which we'll get into more, particularly in Paris. They were just super fed up with royalty and having these inexperienced teenagers and young adults make big financial decisions with advisor, but they still made those decisions, did not help, I think. So back to Marie Antoinette. So even though things started getting better for her interpersonally and socially, things were cooked, as they say, when it comes to her standing politically and with the people of France. So, leading up to her demise, 1776 was the American Revolution, which probably could not have won the revolution without the support of France. And in a twist of fateful irony, that probably really, really depleted the finances of France, among other things. And about 1788 is when it started getting sticky. The people were really angry and upset and starving. So it was not a great time. And so by the time 1793 rolled around in January, Marie Antoinette's husband was sentenced and guillotined. And then she herself was later that year in October, just shortly before what would have been her 38th birthday, which is wild because I'm 39 now, so I can't imagine doing all that. So, through all that, where did Let Them Eat Cake come from? Well, no one can really say, because anything that was left over there as evidence from that time period of Marie Antoinette in France, there are no newspaper articles, there's no journal entries, there's nothing that anybody has found alleging to her being the Let Them Eat Cake Queen. This was not anything known then, and actually, we only see it attributed to Marie Antoinette about 50 years later by a French writer of the name of Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Carr, where he said he found a quote of Let Them Eat Cake in a book from 1760, but that wouldn't make sense because Marie Antoinette was only about 5 years old at the time. That's reported and alluded to that the philosopher Rousseau wrote in his book called Confessions, which I love it. It's like cue Usher. I wonder if he was an inspiration. He Rousseau, the philosopher, was referencing another queen that said the phrase "let them eat cake," but that was about 100 years ago, before Marie Antoinette. So there's nothing there that is really jiving that they would have said that. It's pretty much debunked at this point. I also find it interesting that the phrase doesn't even translate well, because in English, "let them eat cake" sounds cool, but the actual literal French phrase is "qui mange de la brioche," which translates to "let them eat brioche." And it's like, all right, it's a little more complicated. It's still like, like eggs and butter and stuff, but not as snappy as Let Them Eat Cake. So it's very interesting. So, what we know so far is that Queen Marie Antoinette did live a very lavish lifestyle. This is true. I mean, if I was in that situation and I was like 17, 18, I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, let's party. So we know that, and seeing that, especially because she made public appearances, as almost all royals do, she was still continuing to look lavish and have lavish food and decoration and hair and makeup as the finances of the country were depleting. So being with the commoners, say at an opera, when a lot of the country is starving or having difficulty taking care of themselves, and you see this queen that is still very lavish and might not be acting like anything's wrong. We don't know. I I have read that she gave generously to charities and gave a lot of donations, and she did what she could, but unfortunately, because of gender and royal rules, she could not really help out with the financial structure of the royal family. That was the job of her husband and his advisors. She could a little bit talk, but that was not within her power. When you are married to whoever the figurehead is, you're kind of just hanging out and doing charitable. So, but what we can say about her is she seemed to be very charitable, and so it's even less unlikely that I believe she would say this, especially since it is nowhere to be found during that time period. Um, there were lots of other things said about her, like some really wild accusations. Like there's evidence that people were slut shaming her left and right because she couldn't produce an heir for a long time, and all of a sudden she had 4 kids within 10 years, and people were like, "What is going on?" Um, so like I feel like if there was this big thing that everybody was saying about her, it would be out there too. And once people are starving and they're real mad, I feel like they're gonna all bets are off of what they're gonna say about you. So it just seems like this was a phrase that was in some text and always attributed to different royal people throughout history, and somehow it just got attributed to her. But let's put some respect on her name. Overall, I think she was just a kid that got mixed up in some stuff that was way over her head and was literally not her fault, as she was a political pawn for her mom. And in more dramatic irony for Marie Antoinette, it was such a sad fate for getting married and got guillotined, all in hopes of to protect Austria and keep alliances strong with France. There was a failsafe that was written shortly before she was executed to say if anything happened, Austria is going to invade France. And it kicked off. 1792, that's when the revolution started, and then they were guillotined, and we have years of the French Revolution, and we're in a war with Austria. So the peace that the mom tried to broker by giving France her kid only really lasted like 20 some years, and it wasn't even that great. So was it worth it, Mama Marie Antoinette? Probably not, I would say. So it's just it seems like, yes, she was an adult, Marie Antoinette, and she did try to make some things better within her power, but she was very limited in what she could do, it seems like, being a woman, also being very young when she got into the situation. So she, I don't think, knew how bad it really was going to get because she wasn't involved and had to rely on men who fucked everything up. So that's just extra twist in the knife. So here we are, examining the evidence. Not really any evidence to go by. And all likelihood, knowing how people were feeling about her at the time and what we know about her character at the time, I'd say it's very slim to zero chance she actually said it. So, did Marie Antoinette say, let them eat cake? I very much highly doubt it. So, girl, Marie Antoinette, we are so sorry that they are putting this out on your name, and I hope that gets erased as memory continues and history continues, that that's just like a well-known rumor. So, if you stayed through this and listened, thank you so much. Um, Let me know if you were drinking or snacking during this, getting the tea, getting the gossip, getting into her life a little bit. I'd want to know. I don't have a name for this podcast yet because I just wanted to talk about it, and we will see when this gets posted. There shall be a name, and I'd like to do more. So if you did listen and you stayed this long, thank you again. And if there's any royal disasters or people in history that maybe something was a little mysterious or a little wonky, let me know. I would love to investigate something and talk about it. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great day wherever you are. Bye bye.